Welcome to another deep dive. Um, Today we're tackling the fascinating world of motivation. And I've got a stack of articles and research here all about what drives us to do what we do.
You know, it's amazing how much of what we think we know about motivation is just plain wrong.
Yeah.
The old carrot and stick approach, rewards and punishments, it
Right.
seems intuitive, but it often backfires big time.
Especially for those tasks that need you to think outside the box.
Exactly, like creative work or anything that requires some serious brain power.
Okay, so let's dive into this whole carrot and stick thing. One of the articles, Drive, the surprising truth about what motivates us, talks about some experiments with monkeys back in the 1940s.
Oh, yeah, those monkeys were all about solving puzzles.
For fun.
Yeah, just for the sheer joy of it.
Huh.
In 1949, a psychologist named Harry Harlow gave some rhesus monkeys a mechanical puzzle.
Okay.
They figured it out pretty quickly, just messing around.
So they were naturally curious?
But here's where it gets interesting. Harlow started offering them raisins as a reward.
Like a treat for solving the puzzle.
And guess what? Their performance actually got worse.
They were less motivated when they got a reward.
Yep. It seems counterintuitive, but it highlights something really important. Sometimes the pure enjoyment of doing something, that intrinsic motivation, can be way stronger than any external reward.
That makes me think about, like, when you have a hobby you love and then you start getting paid for it,
Right?
it kind of loses its magic.
Exactly. It becomes more like a chore.
And there was another researcher, Edward Decky, who explored this idea in the late 1960s.
He did some experiments with college students and a 3D puzzle called a Soma cube.
Okay, I've seen those. They're pretty tricky.
He found that students who were paid to solve the puzzle were actually less likely to play with it in their free time.
Compared to the students who weren't getting paid.
Exactly.
So giving them a reward actually made them less interested in the puzzle over time.
It really challenges our assumptions about motivation.
Yeah, it does, big time.
It suggests that maybe those carrots and sticks aren't the best way to get people going, especially in today's world where work is getting more complex and we need people to be creative.
So if the traditional carrot and stick approach, what this book calls Motivation 2.0, isn't working, what's the alternative?
Well, first, we need to understand why Motivation 2.0 is failing.
Okay, let's break that down.
It's based on some outdated ideas.
Like what?
Like the idea that humans are basically robots, purely rational beings only motivated by external reward.
Right. Like little reward-seeking machines.
But behavioral economics shows us that's just not true. We're driven by emotions, a sense of fairness, a desire for meaning and purpose.
Yeah, you see that in those studies where people would rather get nothing than accept an unfair deal.
Exactly. It's not about being rational, it's about fairness.
Right.
And on top of that, the way we work has changed so much since the days of assembly lines and time clocks.
Definitely.
Think about all the knowledge work, remote work, new business models that are popping up.
It's a whole new world.
The old command and control style of management just doesn't fit anymore.
It's like trying to run a smartphone on an old floppy disk.
That's a great analogy. The technology has evolved, but our thinking about motivation hasn't quite caught up.
So what are we missing?
Well, this Drive book outlines 7 deadly flaws of relying solely on carrots and sticks.
7 deadly flaws. That sounds a bit ominous.
It is. The first flaw is that rewards can actually extinguish intrinsic motivation.
Like those monkeys who lost interest in the puzzle when they got raisins.
Exactly. It's called the Sawyer effect, named after Tom Sawyer.
Oh yeah, the kid who tricked his friends into painting the fence.
He made it seem like a privilege.
So when you add a reward, it takes the fun out of it.
Exactly. The second flaw is that rewards can actually diminish performance.
Really?
There's a study where researchers offered participants different rewards for completing tasks.
Okay.
The people who were offered the highest rewards actually performed the worst.
The pressure got to them.
It seems like the pressure of high stakes can really mess with our focus.
So not only can rewards make us enjoy things less, but they can also make us less effective.
That's right. And that brings us to the third flaw. Rewards can crush creativity.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Have you heard of the candle problem?
I think so. Remind me.
They give people a candle, some tacks, and a box, and they have to figure out how to attach the candle to a wall so it burns properly.
And the trick is to use the box as a platform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when people were offered a reward for solving it quickly, they took longer to find the solution.
Really?
The pressure of the reward made it harder to think outside the box. Literally.
So the reward backfired.
Big time. And the fourth flaw is that rewards can crowd out good behavior.
What do you mean?
Well, there was a study on blood donations where people were actually less likely to donate if they were offered money.
It's like the financial incentive made them question their own motives.
Exactly. Like, if they have to pay me, it must not be that important.
Right.
And that leads us to the fifth flaw. Rewards can encourage cheating and unethical behavior.
Oh.
Like those corporate scandals where executives cook the books to get their bonuses.
Yeah, that's taking it to a whole other level.
The pressure of the reward can make people compromise their ethics.
So we're 5 flaws deep into this rabbit hole.
And there are 2 more. The sixth is that rewards can become addictive.
Addictive.
Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, and when rewards are involved, we can get caught in this cycle of wanting more and more.
Like with gambling or video games.
Exactly. But it can happen with more everyday things, too.
Like constantly checking your phone for notifications.
Exactly. And that brings us to the seventh and final flaw. Rewards can foster short-term thinking.
How so?
Well, when we're laser-focused on getting a reward, we tend to neglect the long-term consequences of our actions.
Like those companies that prioritize quarterly profits over long-term sustainability.
Exactly. So we've seen all these ways that carrots and sticks can backfire. But this Drive book does acknowledge that there are some situations where rewards and punishments can be effective.
Okay, so give me the exceptions to the rule. When do carrots and sticks actually work?
They tend to be more effective for what the book calls routine tasks,
Yeah.
things that are very straightforward and don't require a lot of creativity or critical thinking.
Like assembly line work or data entry.
Exactly. For those types of tasks, rewards can provide a little boost without undermining intrinsic motivation.
So for tasks that are already pretty boring and don't require much brain power, rewards might not do too much damage.
Right, but the key is to make sure the rewards are unexpected and given after the task is completed. Don't dangle them in front of someone like a bribe.
Got it. So it's more about recognizing good work than incentivizing it.
Exactly. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about what doesn't work when it comes to motivation, but the good news is there's a whole new way of thinking about it, one that's much better suited for the challenges of the 21st century.
Okay, I'm ready to hear about this new way of thinking. What's the secret? Okay, so spill the beans. What's this new way of thinking about motivation?
Well, the book calls it Motivation 3.0, and it's all about tapping into our intrinsic drive.
Okay, so less about external rewards and more about what gets us fired up from within.
Exactly. It's about focusing on 3 key things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Okay, break those down for me. What do they actually mean?
So autonomy is about having control over your own life and work, the freedom to choose what you do, when you do it, how you do it, and who you do it with.
So like having flexible work hours or being able to choose which projects you take on.
Exactly. And mastery is about the drive to get better at something that matters to you. It's that feeling of accomplishment when you learn a new skill or push yourself to the next level.
It's like that flow state you get into when you're totally absorbed in something, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, it's when I'm coding, I completely lose track of time.
That's a perfect example of mastery and action. And then there's purpose. It's about connecting your work to something bigger than yourself, knowing that what you're doing is making a difference.
So it's not just about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about feeling like your work has meaning.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that there are companies out there who are embracing these Motivation 3.0 principles.
Okay, I need to hear about this. Give me some examples.
Well, one company that's doing it right is Atlassian. They're a software company.
Okay.
And they have this thing called 20% time.
20% time. What's that?
Employees get to spend 20% of their time on projects that they're passionate about, even if it's not directly related to their job.
Wow, so they're actually encouraging their employees to go explore their own ideas.
Exactly. And it's led to some of their most innovative products.
That's impressive. So giving people that freedom and autonomy really pays off.
It does. And another great example is Best Buy.
The electronics store?
Yep. They implemented something called a results-only work environment.
ROW.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's a ROW?
It means there are no set schedules or mandatory office hours. Employees are judged solely on their results.
It's about trusting people to get their work done.
Exactly. And it works. They saw a huge increase in productivity, and employee turnover went down.
Wow. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense. When you give people that freedom, they step up.
They do. And it shows that you don't need to be chained to your desk to be productive.
Okay, so autonomy is key. But what about mastery? How can companies encourage their employees to develop their skills?
Well, one way is to understand the concept of flow.
We talked about that earlier, that state of being totally immersed in something.
Right. And research shows that flow happens when we're working on tasks that are challenging but not overwhelming.
The Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. Not too hard, not too easy, just right.
Right.
And one way to create more of those flow opportunities is to give employees more control over which tasks they take on.
So if I'm passionate about a project, I'm more likely to get into that flow state.
Exactly. And another important element is having a growth mindset.
Oh, I've heard about that. It's about believing that you can always learn and grow, right?
Exactly. It's about embracing challenges and seeing failures as opportunities to learn.
Instead of getting discouraged.
Exactly. And research has shown that people with a growth mindset are way more likely to achieve their goals.
So how can companies encourage a growth mindset?
By creating a culture of learning and development, where people are encouraged to take risks, try new things, and not be afraid to fail.
It's about celebrating the effort, even if things don't go perfectly.
Exactly. And when people feel safe to experiment, they're more likely to push themselves and reach their full potential.
Okay, so we've covered autonomy and mastery. But what about purpose? How do you find purpose in a job that maybe isn't saving the world?
That's a great question. And the key is to remember that purpose doesn't have to be something huge. It can be as simple as making a positive impact on the people around you.
So even in a seemingly ordinary job, you can still find ways to make a difference.
Exactly. For example, if you work in customer service, you can focus on providing amazing support and brightening someone's day.
Or if you're working in a factory, you can take pride in the quality of the product you're making.
Exactly. It's about finding meaning in the everyday things.
And companies can help with this, right?
Absolutely. By being clear about their mission and values and showing employees how their work contributes to that bigger picture.
So it's not enough to just have a mission statement on the wall. You have to actually show people how they're making a difference.
Precisely. And some companies are taking it even further by building purpose into their business models.
Like Time as shoes.
Exactly. They donate a pair of shoes for every pair they sell.
That's a great example. They're proving that you can be profitable and do good at the same time.
Exactly. And there are more and more companies like that popping up.
It's inspiring to see that shift in the business world.
It is. People are looking for more than just a paycheck.
They want to feel like their work matters.
Exactly. And the research backs it up. When people feel like their work has purpose, they're more engaged and more satisfied.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
And speaking of winning, this Drive book highlights a study about different types of goals and how they affect our well-being.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, they found that people who had purpose goals, things like helping others or making a difference in the world, were happier and more satisfied than those who just had profit goals.
So even if you're making a ton of money, you might not be happy if your work doesn't have a deeper meaning.
Exactly. And this was true even for people who achieved both types of goals. The purpose goals seem to have a stronger connection to happiness.
That's really powerful.
Right.
It suggests that if we want to live meaningful lives, we need to find ways to align our work with our values.
I agree. And one of the coolest examples of this is the MBA oath.
What's that?
It's a pledge created by some Harvard Business School students.
Okay.
It's a commitment to prioritize ethical behavior, social responsibility, and sustainability in their careers.
So they're basically saying that business can be a force for good.
Exactly. And their oath has inspired thousands of MBA grads around the world. It's a real sign that things are changing.
Okay, so we've explored these three elements of Motivation 3.0, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we've seen how companies can put these ideas into practice. But I'm thinking about all those people who aren't working in these ideal environments.
Right.
What if you're stuck in a job that doesn't offer much autonomy, mastery, or purpose? What then?
That's a great question. And we're going to tackle that in the final part of our deep dive.
So we left off with this big question. What about all those folks who aren't working at a company like Atlassian or Best Buy? What if you're stuck in a job that doesn't exactly feel like your calling? Can you still find that spark?
You absolutely can. You don't have to quit your job and become a monk to experience Motivation 3.0.
Right.
Even in a less than ideal job, there are things you can do to tap into that intrinsic drive.
So how do you do that? Where do you even begin if your job feels a bit soul-crushing?
Well, the first step is to shift your focus from what you can't control to what you can control.
Okay.
So instead of dwelling on all the things you hate about your job, look for those little areas where you do have some freedom.
Those little pockets of autonomy.
Exactly. Maybe you can experiment with a new way of doing things, or find a more efficient process. Even small acts of autonomy can make a big difference.
It's about taking ownership, even in a system that can feel very limiting.
Exactly. And another strategy is to focus on mastery. Think about the skills you want to develop and look for opportunities to learn and grow.
So even if my company doesn't offer any training programs, I can still take the initiative.
Absolutely. Maybe there's a software program you want to learn or an industry certification you can get. Or maybe you can volunteer for a project that stretches your abilities.
It's about being proactive.
Exactly. And remember, mastery is not about being perfect. It's about continuous improvement and enjoying the process of learning.
Okay, so we've talked about finding autonomy and focusing on mastery. But what about purpose? How do you find purpose in a job that doesn't feel particularly meaningful?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's important to remember that purpose doesn't have to be some grand, world-changing thing. It can be as simple as finding ways to make a positive impact on the people around you.
So even in a seemingly ordinary job, you can still make a difference.
Exactly. Like if you work in customer service, you can focus on providing exceptional support and making someone's day.
Or if you're working in a factory, you can take pride in the quality of the products you're making.
Exactly. It's about reframing your perspective and seeing the value in what you do.
Even if it's not glamorous.
Right. And if you're really struggling to find purpose in your job itself, you can always look for it outside of work.
Like volunteering or joining a community group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having a sense of purpose outside of work can actually make you more motivated at your job, too.
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. And you know, this drive book actually has a whole section called the Type I Toolkit.
A toolkit. I love toolkits.
It's full of strategies for boosting your motivation.
So what are some of your favorites?
Well, one that I really like is the flow test.
What's that?
It's where you track your activities for a few days and notice which ones put you in that flow state.
The state where you're totally engaged and energized.
Exactly. And once you know what those activities are, you can try to do more of them.
Make them a bigger part of your life.
Exactly. Another great strategy is to ask yourself 2 questions at the end of each day.
Oh, okay. And let's
What got me up in the morning and what kept me up at night?
Those are good ones.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about what truly motivates you.
And if the answers don't inspire you, it might be time to make some changes.
Right. It's a sign that you need to reevaluate your priorities.
Exactly. And one last strategy I want to mention is the idea of creating your own motivational poster.
Okay, I gotta admit, I'm not really into those cheesy motivational posters you see everywhere.
Oh, I know what you mean. But this is different. This is about creating something that's personally meaningful to you.
So like a quote that inspires you.
Exactly. Or maybe a picture of something you're working towards. It's a visual reminder of your goals and values.
I like that. And the best part about all this Motivation 3.0 stuff is that it's not just about work.
Right.
It applies to all areas of life.
Exactly. Our relationships, our hobbies, our personal growth. We can use these ideas to find more meaning and fulfillment in everything we do.
So the key takeaway is that motivation is not something that just happens to us.
It's something we create.
It's about understanding what drives us and building environments that nurture those inner motivators.
Exactly. And when we do that, we can achieve amazing things, both personally and professionally.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
It's been my pleasure. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to find their own sources of motivation and create a life that truly lights them up.
So as you go out into the world, consider this. What if we stopped trying to motivate others and focused on creating spaces where their natural motivation can flourish? That's something to think about. And until next time, keep diving deep